All right, I think we are live. There's a few minutes to go yet. If there happened to be anyone online, what you'll see just below the video will be a place to put your name, email address. So we need your email address for us to be able to communicate. It's the system we've got. And then underneath there's a box for you to type in. So let's see if there's anybody online. And what I'd like you to do is to put your name in, put your email address in, and then say hi. And I could then see this on my end. And we still got a few minutes before we start, so it could be just myself there. And that's fair enough. I'm used to talking to myself. Happens all the time. It's amazing what answers you get when you talk to yourself, especially when you ask good questions. And yes, it does seem like I'm talking to myself at the moment. We got a few more minutes just before we get going. So, what have I been up to today? I've been filming. Spent most of the day in here filming, behind there, in front of the screen. So it's been good. It's been very productive. It's a mini course we're doing on introducing NLP and some of the major concepts that quite possibly some other NLP trainings don't cover. So look out for that. That'll be coming up soon. All right, we got about 30 seconds. So if you're here and you've signed in, I'd like you to say hi. And all you need to do is just below the camera here, you'll find a box to put your name, email address, and then a box for any questions. So go ahead, put your name in, put your email address in, and then say hi, just to see who's here. And we'll get going in around 38 seconds. Great stuff. Okay, we're getting there. If you're keeping count, we now have about. Hiya, Jim. Thanks. I can see you there live on screen, coming with you all smiley and with a shiny head. How have you been? I realized we were meant to catch up today. Sorry about that, Jim. Life overtook me. I don't know where the week's gone. Hi, Steve. Good to hear from you. And I think we need to have a chat soon as well. This is like a friends reunion. How wonderful is that? Without people dancing around the water fountain, obviously. Okay, we'll get going in just a moment. Excellent stuff. Oh, we got a few. Hi, David. Welcome. Good to see you. I hope you are well and been changing the world. And Tony, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Chet, hey, good to hear from you. And I hope the life's good for you. Right, let's get going. There's some people here. The party has started. So, this is part two of a four-part webinar series on influence. Now, last time, what we started to explore was what did we mean by influence? And we did a linguistic analysis of that word. So if you haven't had chance to catch up with last week's webinar, I highly recommend you do that. There is a handout to download as well. We've talked about the underlying principles of how does the brain become influence? And we talked about the principle from the prime directors, the unconscious mind, as we call them in the NLP, that the unconscious mind does not process negatives. And that was the underlying foundation for all influencing techniques. Then there's this other little quirk the brain has. Well, it fills in missing information. And we did an exercise where a little experiment where we talked about a rabbit, a car, and a road. Now, for some of you, if you missed last week, that means nothing to you. So go and listen to that now. So what are we going to be exploring this time? Well, one of the things we promised was to explore the communication, the language of the unconscious mind. And I didn't quite use that phrase, but to influence somebody, there is some gatekeepers that we need to take into consideration. And there is a language that works really well. So all very mysterious. Okay, so technology allowing, I've got some PowerPoints for tonight's show. I feel like it was a bit of a show airing across the world here. And what you'll see, you'll find them just below there. So if you do want to download the PowerPoints that go along with this session, feel free to. Okay, so Jim's come back. I didn't even see the invitations for the webinar last week. Slides must be good at some point, no hurry. Okay, so sorry about that, Jim. Not sure why, but give me an email after the process, and what I'll do, I'll send you an invitation. Yes, you get a private invitation. So let me go and just quickly check something to make sure that the message is showing. So hopefully you've got some information below that you can download. If not, never worry. There's always technology involved. One thing you can guarantee when you're doing technology, there's going to be some interesting moments. So if the PowerPoints are not there, just email me and I'll send you all those. I think they're worth having. So what I'm going to do, everything permitting, is switch over to PowerPoint just for a little while. And this is all live, so who knows what's going to happen. And then I'll come back on air and we'll answer some questions. Now, there's always delays when asking questions. So submit them. Now, when I'm doing the PowerPoint, I won't be able to see your questions for a little while, but as soon as I come back on, I'll catch up with all the comments and questions. So hopefully that's all okay. I've got two screens here, as you can see. Oh, there you go. Jim says, right click on a download link, opens a new tab. Otherwise, people lose the live feed. Thanks. That should automatically open a new tab, hopefully. Okay. And chat said he didn't get it as well. What's going on? Is nobody reading the emails I'm sending out? Right. So hopefully we'll make sure you're getting those. Okay. Now here comes the technical part where we're going to switch over to PowerPoint. Oh, I'm on a Mac. So what I really should say is key. Okay. Okay. Ooh, hey, I've been practicing this, and that's the first time that happened. So bear with me for a second. It is worth waiting for. Okay, I think we're on. Good stuff. So just for a second, before I fill the screen with PowerPoint, can I just check that everybody can see on screen a red slide that says Language of Influence and Persuasion Part 2? And as soon as you can, I'll believe that that's all working. So we tried various different platforms for webinars, and this seems to be a pretty good one. So hopefully, and we have to realize there's anything we do online, there's going to be a delay. And Stephen says we're there, so let's rock and roll. Okay. So Language and Influence or Persuasion Part 2, we're going to carry on from where we left off. Now, this quote from Albert Einstein. The most important decision you'll ever make is whether you live in a safe or dangerous world. It's spot on the money. And what we'll start to discover as we move through this session is how profound that statement is. Okay, so what we're going to explore is something called the triune brain theory by Paul MacLean. Now, in 1959, he proposed all sorts of ideas, and 1960s, 1968, I believe it was. He proposed this idea that the brain had three parts to it. He talked about the reptilian brain, the limbic or the mammalian brain, and the neocortex. And so this is important from when we're thinking about influencing someone and the idea of rapport and trust, where we often start in any NLP training. This is one of the foundations, is to build rapport, to build that trust. We'll start to recognize as we unpack the triune brain theory and how important that is. Okay, so the reptilian brain. So this is the eldest of the three in this model, and it's to do with survival, if you like, the instincts. And so it controls heart rate, breathing, body temperature, our balance. This is the part where it's fight or flight. So if it's going to fight, I can take you on. I one hand behind my back, I'll fight you. Or I'm just going to run. I'm going to run as fast as I possibly can. I know. Let's freeze. If we stay still, they may not even see that we're here. They look attractive. There are some ideas flowing through my mind. This is all part of the reptilian brain. Rituals. Now, one of the things that the reptilian brain is looking for is routines and patterns. And this is the decision part of the brain. And based on flight, fight, free, sex rituals, makes a certain decisions and wants to expand the least amount of energy. Okay, so let's put that into a process. I might be hanging out with engineers just a little bit too much, although this is a small flow diagram. So we get some stimulus, and that information comes in. And now this could be somebody else who's trying to influence you, communicate with you. And this is also what we've got to be aware about when we wish to influence someone else. Will be their stimulus. And the reptilian part of the brain goes, is this a dangerous? Is this dangerous to me in any way? And if it decides yes, for whatever reason, and it can be just the way that you look, the way that you sound. It could be the situation. It could be what's going on around you. So there's certain things maybe outside of our control. It goes, right, we've got to deal with it, got to fight. And that might mean that any chance of influencing that person has now disappeared. This is all done at an unconscious level, by the way. And it goes, right, stand my ground. I've got to defend my position. I'm going to attack. Or let's run away. Let's get away from here. Let's not speak. Let's remove ourselves from the situation. Now, as you can imagine, that's not going to be useful. Now, if it's not dangerous, the reptilian brain goes, oh, is it novel? So if it's not novel, it's not interesting, the reptilian brain says, basically, we can ignore that. We don't need to bother the higher consciousness with any of this. However, if there's a pattern going on or a surprise factor, and yes, there's sex coming up again, maybe that's the wrong terminology, or is it interesting? Yes, it then gets sent up to a higher level of the brain. So let's explore that. And that's the limbic, the mammalian brain. This is the emotional, emotionals, love, hate, and all those wonderful emotions, anger. So this is still at an unconscious level. All these emotions and processes are being processed at an unconscious level. So think of this. You're communicating with somebody. What you said has got their interest. And it's fascinating them. They don't perceive you as danger. It gets sent up to the emotional part of the brain, the limbic part of the brain. And the limbic part of the brain kicks in with imagination. So emotion may be triggered at this point, and imagination gets triggered. It's kind of black and white thinking. And part of that is also a secondary to anticipate the danger from previous experiences. And what I mean by that is that you could be wearing a suit that somebody else has worn, and it could be as simple as this, a suit that somebody else has worn, and then because you're wearing the same suit and it's the same color, this part of the brain lumps you in with how they were treated then. So slightly more simple way of saying this is the signal from the reptilian brain puts us on emotional guard. It's past focus, what's happened to us in the past. It's black and white thinking. The imagination is equaling our reality. So what's going on inside our own heads is triggering our reality based on past, present, and future. Everything gets lumped into one. Now, finally, we hit consciousness, and it's the neurocortex. The new brain, the prefrontal cortex. It's the thinking part of the brain. It's the part that thinks it's in charge. Now, notice there's several layers in this model before, and all at an unconscious level. The reptilian, mammalian brain, all happening unconscious very, very quickly before we get into actually thinking that we're in charge. And we know this part, its left and right hemisphere has language, highly developed verbal use, logic. So if you've ever heard the phrase sell with emotion, people justify with logic, That makes a lot of sense in this model. Okay, so when we started with the quote from Albert Einstein, and I said we'll find this profound in our part to influence somebody for the good, to help change their lives, and also for ourselves, we need to make somebody feel safe and secure. So essentially, when we communicate with anybody at any level for anything, the influencing part starts with the reptilian brain. Can we speak the reptilian language? Can we make it feel safe? And one of the ways that we can do that is through rapport, empathy, understanding. Now, language is processed very differently at this level, and it's more to do with trance language. And I'll give you an example in a moment of the trance language and then translate that into everyday use of language. So notice this, if we can use language that contains patterns within it, we gain rapport with the reptilian part of the brain. And once the reptilian part of the brain is happy with that, it gets passed up to the higher levels of mind. And that's what I meant in this session when we're going to be talking about language of influence. This is before we get to the words. But hey, I think we ought to have some language patterns. So this is a bit of Milton language. So if you've not done any NLP training before, Milton language, Milton Erickson was a doctor who took hypnosis off the stage and put it into the medical arena. He was one of the very first people to be modeled and was getting amazing results with people, healing their lives, changing their worlds, using language in certain ways. And in NLP, we explore very deeply a whole range of these language patterns. Here, let's have a quick look at just a few language patterns, a paragraph of NLP language patterns. So here we go. Now, I wouldn't tell you to go into a trance now, because the issue is not how you will go into trance. It is the fact that hearing my voice gives you the comfort and confidence you need to relax and make the changes you want in your life. All right, so notice the language, the softening language. I wouldn't tell you to go into trance now. So notice that safe language. But essentially, based on what we talked about last week, we know that I've just placed the image of going into trance into your mind. But not yet. Stay with me. And I'm saying it's not the fact that you're going to go into trance. That's not the issue at all. It's the issue that you hear in my voice gives you comfort and confidence. But how does that work out? If you logically try to, if you're kicking your cortex, you go, what? But this is language for the reptilian, the mammalian part of the brain, the unconscious level. And it makes a lot of sense from what we've just said. Now, you might go, hey, John, I'm working in an office. I'm not going to be able to use those language patterns because I'm not putting people into trance. Are you not? So let's see if we can take that same passage and maybe use it within a work setting. Okay. I wouldn't tell you to decide now because the issue is not how you will decide. It is the fact that taking you through this proposal gives you the comfort and confidence you need for the work we'll do together. So it's the same thing. We've taken it straight from the hypnosis trance language patterns and used it within a phrase that with a little bit of practice wouldn't sound too out of place. So you're saying, it's not, I wouldn't tell you to decide now to move ahead with this because the issue is not how you will decide. It is the fact that taking you through this proposal gives you the comfort and confidence you need for the work we'll do together. Soft language with one outcome. Right. So let's have a quick look at this last slide and put a bit of a structure around there. any influencing tool, any technique, having a clear goal in mind. Because if you don't know what you're attempting to do, then it doesn't matter what you do. No technique's going to work unless you know what it you want to do and how you're going to measure success. Now, if you want someone to be excited in our examples about the proposal, then make yourself excited. Put yourself in that state. Because once you gain rapport, and we notice that rapport opens up the reptilian brain to go to the next levels, which will finally get to the cortex, that rapport builds that relationship. So you often have to believe in yourself at this point. So pay attention. What you're looking is for feedback loops. Do you need to go faster? Do you need to slow down? Do you need to pause? And think of language as placing images in people's minds. This is probably just me. This is my little thing. Have fun while you're doing it. I mean, it's all contextual, of course. But if you have fun with NLP, you're more likely to use it. Wow, covered a lot there. So what I'm going to do is I'd like to turn the slides off now. So you just bear with me a second while I press the various different buttons and then see if there's any questions or comments. But please do go ahead. Give me your questions, any comments you have of this, and maybe how you've used some of the things we've talked about already and the results that you got from that. So give me a second. While you're typing away, I will escape the PowerPoint. Here we go. And now I should be back. Hi, you guys. Right, so let's go over. Okay. So most of you says you can hear me, but no slides. Unable to download a presentation. And then, so it did seem like maybe you were talking to a blank screen. I do apologize, guys. Everything should have worked. So what you saw was a photo of myself. For some reason, all my controls disappeared as well. So all I could see was the slides. Okay, and I was able to download a presentation. Thanks, Steve. And thanks, Mike, for letting me know that slideshow is not on the screen. Technology, eh? All the practice I did. So Jim, he's got some language patterns up here, and to read out what he says. Language patterns, if not, it's Y. It's not X, it's Y. That's the language pattern that we saw there. Sounds like an idea your limbic brain is struggling to process negatives. Don't think right now about a pink elephant. So is that anywhere near the mark? Yep, you're right on there, Jim. That's nice putting those together. So if you're proposing an intelligent use of negative appeals to the limbic part of the brain, which can then be processed, reality checked by neurocortex, feedback loop, like it when you say, have fun with NLP. Fabulous. Okay, so a few of you, for whatever reasons, could not see the slides. I'm heartbroken. I spent so much time on the slides. They're so beautiful. But it's not the fact that you couldn't see the slides. What really mattered was that you could hear the in-depth knowledge, which will change the way you communicate. Is it not? Or have I heard that somewhere before? Okay, so we had some technical issues. We covered a lot of information. So questions, observations. Just going to let those come through. Now, as they start to come through, on that, we can see how quickly influencing can move into bullying somebody. And that's why the feedback loop is so important. Because what can happen is when somebody's unsure of themselves or unstable in some way, or maybe not sure of where they stand, or just very polite, you can manipulate somebody in a way you can manipulate somebody in a way that you can bully them in, which is not what we talked about from an influencing point of view. We notice influence is about raising somebody up to a higher standard, whereas bullying is hijacking the reptilian brain so that it freezes the mammalian brain, not really sure what's going on, and then the neocortex has to do something to respond to the situation. And though you can bully somebody in, and sometimes you see this in hard cells, and in hard cells, they may make the sale, but you get buyer's remorse, and that's a huge return rate. And there's a big distinction there. Okay, so we've got Tony's come in, and he says, notice there was no punctuation in examples of the Milton language. Why is that? Artfully vague. Absolutely. Now, spoken language for the unconscious mind has a different effect than when you see written language or proper language. And I'm not sure what proper language is. Okay, so when you write something down, it's written down for the conscious mind to respond to it. Whereas Milton allows you to use language that flows and has unusual pauses and ways of engaging people that punctuation undermines. Okay, Jim's come back. So he says, haha, you're more or less just said, I'm not telling you to look at the slides because the use of the voice gives you the confidence you need to follow the material. Ah, you picked up on that. Fabulous. Great stuff. And what you'll see is that punctuation is really for the conscious mind, and the unconscious mind language is a very different process. And I've often thought about, when done correctly, NLP is transformative. It changes people's lives. And this is one of the reasons why we find some of the top people in every field has had some NLP training. And we see lots of different fields borrowing heavily from NLP. And I'm thinking, why is NLP so effective? Because a lot of times what you cannot do is say, it was this technique that changed my life, or it was this concept that turned my life around. No, no, no. Just from what we explored today, it's about flexibility. And that flexibility starts with your thinking inside here. And when you change how you think, that also puts you in control. You can use your brain for a change. Then, the other big factor, NLP changes the way you approach language. And the Milton language patterns, they're like riffs people, guitarists learn. And then the people who make music that has the hairs on the back of your neck stand up are the people that go beyond the rote memory of the patterns and create something much bigger than the language itself. But one of the greatest predictors of success in any area of your life is how you utilize language. And that's how you use language inside here and with other people. But got all very profound about NLP there. I tend to do that. I'm not sure why. All right. So I wanted to leave lots of time for questions. It doesn't seem to, there's a few of your interaction, which is wonderful. So we covered the content in plenty of time. So if there are any questions, post them now. If not, I think we're done. Are you aware of just how much we managed to cover in such a short period of time? Hear, hear. Ah, Jim. Now, Jim is good at typing. They're quite long, so I'll read these out in chunks. Okay, Jim. So punctuation, a form of visual pauses. There's a lot to talk out there in the coaching world about written communication within the context of emails, in emoticons, etc. I'm receiving more and more requests for written comma training, and the route I'm taking is to encourage people to write how they speak. As long as they're trained to speak properly and use language effectively, deliberate use of exclamation marks, and a winkle emoji here. What are your thoughts? Okay, right. So this seems to be a question about a proper grammar. I think I said that right. Maybe not. Proper grammar, as opposed to more of a casual conversation. Now, when we explore those two camps, they're both very valid. And it all depends on your goal. Everything comes back to is what are you trying to achieve within the communication? And then it's contextual. So let's say your an example was in the coaching world, written communication. So if you're a coach and you want to coach entrepreneurs who are just starting out, maybe rather than people establishing a big company, so entrepreneurs who are in their first sort of 3 years and are living a kind of alternative lifestyle, or other coaches that you want to connect to, then it makes sense to be much more conversational. And so, in what you're attempting to do, being more conversational, is can I get my personality across? Now, what you'll notice is beginning of last year, I changed what I was doing in my newsletters. And newsletters are great, but if you've ever written a weekly newsletter, it's amazing how much work goes into them. And what I discovered was I just had this insight. I just suddenly went, I'm doing the newsletters. They were not really resounding with anybody. It was just information. So I thought I'd do something different. And my insight was this. Let's see. And there's two really. Let me be more me within that. I wanted to connect with people like myself and have put the fun back into the newsletters, if you like. And the other thing was that I've been doing a lot of story looping. So completely changed how I did newsletters. So if you happen to collect my newsletters, and why would you not? You can track this back. So one of the first newsletters I sent out, I started off and I this morning I've just been playing with my daughter and we've been doing handstands and various bits and pieces like this. Then I went to a topic, did another topic, but not finishing really any of those. And then I ended it with, oh, my daughter's calling me. She wants me to go and do a handstand again. So as long as I don't hurt myself, see you next week. And it was basically 3 loop stories. And I said, I think I was talking about influence. And I said, oh, remind me to tell you about the dangers of, which was another open loop. So there's about 3 to 4 open loops on it. Very kind of personal, more conversational. And the response I got back, bearing in mind my newsletters never really got any responses before that, I had within 2 days 20 people contact me saying, oh, how are good to hear from you again. And it's my personality come through, but it was used for a particular purpose. Now the websites, and this has been one of my downfalls, is when I'm going after corporate work, I am dyslexic. And now being dyslexic is a lot of fun and there's lots of advantages to it, but dyslexic is a hard word to spell anyway, even if you can spell. I think they asked the dyslexic, how do you spell that? And they went D-Y, there's definitely an X in there somewhere. So I'm a very creative speller and I can be creative with my grammar. So that's not a strong point of mine. And you know what? I lost work because of that. It's sad. So I now have proofreaders that go through my stuff. So anything really important, anything corporate, one of the best proofreaders I've ever come across is on the line now. Steve, not to you, Steve. He goes through it and he picks up things. So the question is that one better than the other? No, it depends on your goal, your outcome. And what I do find is once you've got if you're going for corporate, definitely make sure everything is right. And once you're there, corporations are made up of people, and people like somebody with personality. That's what I found anyway. So you can connect with people by being genuine. The some of the biggest organizations in the world are very much like that. So One of my greatest pleasures in the last few years, I've got to do a lot of work with Jaguar Land Rover, an amazing company, growing exponentially, very, very successful. And the people there are just amazing. And yes, so once I'm there, I can again go back to being myself. I don't know if that helped, Jim. Um, but what you're really saying is one better than the other, I think, within the conversation of the coaches and people writing to you. Grammar is important, but what's much more important is the message. People will be forgiven if the message is good, contextual. What's the goal? Great. Wow. Again, we've covered so much in such a short period of time. So this is webinar 2. And webinar 1 is on replay if you want to see that. So if you're not sure where to find the link, just email me. I'll take care of it personally, just because it's you. Next week is again, next week is, I think it's a Thursday. I'll have to double check. It might be a Wednesday. In between that, I'm going camping with my son. Well, say camping. I'm probably not going to get a lot of sleep. But I should be ready for next week's, where if you've got any questions, then that'll be great. And I'll look forward to seeing it. And Jim says the message, that's why I encourage them to write how they speak. Personality come through. Oh, I do agree, Jim. The world is becoming humanized. It really is. And better for so. Have a fabulous week. Be a little bit outrageous. It's always good to be outrageous. Go out in the world and make a difference. Thank you for logging in and bearing with me with the technical stuff. And I know you had to look at my shiny head while we had the slides. What can we do? Never mind. We'll sort all that out. So until next week, have a wonderful time and I'll see you soon. Thanks, guys. And thank you for joining in and the comments. David, can you remind us of your email, please? Yes, it's John, JOHN, at NLPcourses.com. NLPcourses.com. Very easy. Next week is Thursday. Yes, we're on for next week. And yeah, I can double check that. Next week, Thursday, influence that creates good. So we're building on everything that we're doing here. And there's a lot of information. And chat saying any books you can recommend. Yes, Pitch Anything, which I think is a great book. Now, it's a book that a lot of people told me to read, and I put off reading it because it's about negotiation in sort of multi-billion-dollar organizations. And I thought, I'm not sure what I'm going to get from that. It's one of my favorite books. It's one of the books. What I do when I find a book that I think it's got great information in is I'll read the book. I'll buy the audio, listen to the audio, and read it again. And I found that book so valuable. That's one of the books I put through that process. Thanks, Tony. See you soon. And look forward to seeing you all, guys. Have a wonderful evening. And if I survive the camping trip, I'll see you next Thursday. Take care. Be safe. Be outrageous. Have fun. Oh, so yeah, I'm not sure if it's still broadcasting, but Owen Clough, I think that's how you pronounce it, has lots of good stuff on YouTube as well. Yeah, absolutely, Tony. Great stuff. Right, I think I'm still broadcasting. So I'm going to say goodbye yet again.